Teitelbaum. She will address the exclusion of women from peace negotiations and decision-making processes. Ms. Viviane Teitelbaum is a member of the French Speakers' Parliament in Brussels for 20 years and currently serves as its vice president. She is active in social and health affairs, environment, gender equality, and fights against all forms of violence against women, fights racism, anti-Semitism, and homophobia. She is currently the president of the International Council of Women in Europe, the vice president of the European Women's Lobby, and the co-founder and chair of the Feminist Observatory of Violence Against Women. She is the recipient of the Women of Peace distinctions and the Knight of the Leopold Order. Viviane, you have the floor, please. Unmute yourself, please, Viviane.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. It's a real pleasure to be here and part of this prestigious panel. First of all, let's remind ourselves that the participation and leadership of women and girls is essential for democracy, justice, peace, security, prosperity, and a greener planet. Denying them that right and possibility means denying the world respect of democracy and respect of human rights. While UN Security Council Resolution 1325 that was adopted in 2000 is indeed a landmark resolution that recognizes the importance of women's participation in peace and security efforts and calls for their increased involvement in decision-making processes related to conflict prevention, resolution, and post-conflict reconstruction, its progress has been slow in many areas, amongst other because of the lack of political will, of limited resources and capacity, of resistance to change, security challenges. So we need to overcome the remaining barriers. Women bring a unique perspectives, experiences, and priorities to peace and security discussions. I will include also diverse perspectives. As since October 7, we need to remember that all women need to be heard, that feminism needs to include all women, including Jewish women, in all spheres, as victims, but also as actors. Feminicide has to be condemned everywhere. Rape as a weapon of war for all conflicts. Rape is never resistance, regardless of the identity of the victim. The inclusion of all women ensures that a wider range of concerns, including those related to gender-based violence, human rights, and social and economic development, are considered in peace building and conflict resolution efforts. Their right of speech and to be heard are essential for ensuring the protection of women and girls in conflict-affected areas, and we see it clearly today with the women hostages of Hamas. The exclusion of women from decision-making processes can have dramatic consequences and result in the neglect of gender-specific concerns and the failure to implement measures to protect women and girls from sexual violence, exploitation, discrimination, but might also fail to address the specific needs and concerns of women, such as access to justice, women's rights, prevention, and addressing sexual violence. And this can also hinder efforts to promote gender equality and women's empowerment in post-conflict societies, perpetuating cycles of violence and oppression. In conclusion, I want to say the participation of women in decision-making processes related to peace and security is not only a matter of equality between men and women, but also a prerequisite for effective, inclusive, and sustainable peace. Women often play key roles in fostering dialogue, healing divisions, building trust between different groups, and their exclusion can hinder these processes. Women are often at the forefront of efforts to promote community resilience, economic recovery, social cohesion, and in the aftermath of conflict, and their exclusion can hinder progress in these areas. Without women's participation, peace agreements also may fail to address the root causes of gender-based violence or implement measures to protect women and girls from its effects and increase the risk of gender-based violence. In any case, as Shirley Chisholm, the American Congress member and women's rights activist said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. But then I have to admit that when we see how some women and feminists are also in denial of the mass feminicide of October 7, I have to admit, I'm also worried. Thank you.
Thank you, Viviane. And of course, we'll come back to you during the second part of the panel with the questions. I have now the privilege to introduce you to our second panelist, Professor Ruth Halperin-Kadari. She will discuss weaponizing of women and how sexual violence is used as a weapon of war and the silence of the international community. Professor Ruth Halperin-Kadari is an expert on family law and international women's rights and is the founding academic director of the Rachman Center for the Advancement of the Status of Women at Bar-Ilan University, Israel. In 2018, she completed 12 years as a member and a vice chair of the UN Committee on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW. She is a recipient of the US State's Department Women of Courage Award, the apolitical 100 Most Influential People in Gender Policy around the world, and the Human Rights Award 2024 of the Stiftung Foundation. Professor Halperin-Kadari is committing to achieving justice and recognition for the victims of the sexual violence and gender-based atrocities executed by Hamas on October 7th. Since then, she has been working endlessly to achieve this sole goal under the DINA project. She has met with the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, and she was instrumental in securing the fact-finding mission in Israel by the UN Secretary General's Special Representative for Sexual Violence in Conflict, Ms. Pramila Patel. Ruth, we would be delighted to hear from you now. Please.
Thank you very much, Pascal, and thank you, Yael. Thank you, Women Waging Peace, and the collaboration with the Canadian mission to the UN for bringing this event, especially in the memory of beloved Vivian Silver. As you pointed out at the beginning, one of the pillars of Security Council Resolution 1325 is the protection. And part of the protection, as I see it, has to be recognition of conflict-related sexual violence when it happens, and condemnation and accountability of those who perpetrated sexual violence and used it as a weapon of war and weaponized women to achieve their political goals, as happened on October 7. And very sadly and regrettably, we had witnessed an almost total failure by the international human rights community, including by women's organizations and including by those who are supposed to lead the protection of women and the advancement of gender equality and women's rights within the UN framework. And I refer here, of course, to UN Women. I am among those who had been advocating since October 7, or rather October 8, because on October 7, like so many others, I was dumbfounded. I just watched the screens and could not believe my eyes and could not really understand what was happening. But then on October 8, when I realized that part of Hamas atrocities the day before must have also involved sexual violence, we tried to reach out to the rest of the world. We tried to ask for recognition, acknowledgement that these crimes against humanity were part of Hamas attack, and we were betrayed by numerous UN entities, including by UN Women. First, there was silence, and then very, very weak and very late response. I could also allow for perhaps the first 3 weeks to take the time for getting the most important evidence out in the open. But by November 14, when the first eyewitness testimony of the gang rape was released by Israel's police at the International Media Conference, that was the point where all those human rights organizations and UN entities and agencies should have stepped up and should have said, we condemn the perpetrators of using sexual violence as a weapon of war. And now it is the time to seek for justice for the victims of those conflict-related sexual violence. The first step in achieving the justice, as I see it, is the report that was released last week by the Secretary General's Special Representative on Conflict-Related Sexual Violence, Ms. Pramila Patten, who found unequivocally that in relation to the hostages, there is clear and convincing evidence that they had been subjected to sexual violence, and it is most likely that sexual violence still goes on in captivity as we speak. And the first demand, the first step in achieving justice must be the immediate and unconditional release of all those hostages, including the 19 young women who are still going through hell even now as we speak. And there are other steps that must be taken both on the international front and within domestic proceedings and procedures. And perhaps I will be able to expand on that in the second round of questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ruth. And we'll discuss that further in a few minutes. I take a great pleasure now to introduce you to our third panelist, Ms. Nira Shpak. Nira is going to address women in security, their roles, attitudes, and challenges. Nira Shpak is a colonel in the reserves of the Israeli Defense Force. She was the first woman to reach the rank of brigade commander and commander of an operational sector, and she was the first woman to lead the training section in Israel Ground Forces. She worked at the Ministry of Defense and Ministry of Home Front Defense. Ms. Shpak also entered local and national politics. She became a member of the Israeli parliament, where she was the head of the Committee of the Defense of the Home Front and the lobby chairwoman for Home Front empowerment in the Gaza envelope area. She was a recipient of the Knights of the Quality Government Award in 2022 by the Movement for Quality Government in Israel. Shpak is a member of the board of the World Jewish Congress Israel. She is a member of Kfar Aza Kibbutz in the border near Gaza. And during the October 7th massacre perpetrated by Hamas, she took an active part in the defense of her kibbutz and saved numerous lives. Nira, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you all very much. And I'm honored to be here. And I have to say that when I hear all the things that all the one in the panel before me says, there is one thing that I can't stop the noise of thinking of how we lose ourselves. Like, you know, I'm in a different position now because, of course, I love and I want hope and peace for all of us. But on October the 7th, people that I do not do anything bad for them enter the kibbutz and try to kill me. So I think that we have, first of all, bring back the trust that there is a solution for all the things that you talked about, because now, me and my friends and the member of the kibbutz, the widows, thinks that there is no hope now, and we must get a strong and a hug and resilience from all that around us. And when I'm thinking about it, I want to talk about women. How can we, and we must, lead in several ways in the same time to take a road that leads us to the peace that we're all talking about. Because when I was in my shelter, I didn't think about peace. I just want to survive and to rescue my grandson that was in another home. You know, even the word home is difficult to me. I say house because I'm not in my house or my home for 5 months, and I want to go back there. And to say that there is only one side that is wrong or right, it's not correct. It's not the real situation. You know, we all know that Vivian was the voice of peace, and she was murdered. So I don't know how, and I don't know when I have the strength to take all of what I have and all of what I got and go back and believe that there is a hope. And when I look at what happens now, I don't see women that scream out loud that these things can't be done. When I see, even though I saw the municipal that was on sorry, can you hear me? Because
yes, it's okay.
Yeah, I don't have a picture, so you see me?
We can see you, yes. We can see you and hear you.
Okay, sorry. So maybe it's not what you wanted to hear, but I think that we all go back to the October the 6th because the voices are no different. Because you say that there is no woman on decision making and we are not taking our place near the table. And maybe I have a few things about it because we are 51% of the people in the world, right? In Israel, in every place, and we are not at the same position when you take a decision. So I have a hard feeling of the one that came to kill me, and it wasn't only the Hamas, and we have to say it out loud. When you talk about not involved came to our kibbutz. And we have to deal with this reality. We can't hide it. If we really want to take a process that bring us to peace, we have to look straight in the eyes and bring the hostages back because this is the main important thing that we have to do. In Kfar Aza, we have 5 hostages still in Gaza, and every day I'm worried for their lives. And I have 3 kids and 2 grandsons that I want them with me, and I want to go back to my safe place in Kibbutz Kfar Aza.
Thank you.
I don't know what is the solution. Maybe here we can hear about something that we all can do together.
I hope so. I hope so. Thank you, Nira. And I have some questions for you a bit later, so it would be interesting to hear about your thoughts about women in military. But now I'm very, very happy. I have the great pleasure to introduce you to our 4th panelist, Ms. Maysam Jaljouli. She will present the voices of Israeli Arab Palestinian women and their current status. Ms. Maysam Jaljouli is a social feminist and a political activist. She is the CEO of SOFAN, a key organization in fulfilling the vision of a shared Arab and Jewish labor in the high-tech industry for a diverse society in a successful economy. For many years, she has been deeply involved in the promotion of workers' rights, women's rights, and civil rights. Ms. Al-Jouli is a recipient of the New Israeli Fund's Galanter Prize for inspiring social leadership and recipient of the Working Man Award for activism. Meissam, we are delighted to hear from you now. Please.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this very important meeting. I'm very glad to be here, also to maybe to bring the voices that sometimes it's very easy to ignore, the voices of the Palestinians, Israeli women. And unfortunately, it's not only the voices of us, as you know, we are considered to be in the both sides. We are Israelis, we are Israeli citizens, but we are also Palestinian, and we are part of the Palestinian people who are living in Gaza and the West Bank. And many of us also have families that live now in Gaza, and they are suffering so much from the war. So I just want to begin and say that the 7th of October was a shock, as a trauma for all of us, for all women, I think, and all over, not only Israel, and I think all over the world. And for me, the 7th of October was shocking in a way that we really, as women, as Palestinian women who are Israeli citizens, felt so much solidarity and pain and shocked by the massacre that happened in the 7th of October. And actually, I think that the Arab community, the Arab society immediately condemned what is happening in what happened in the 7th of October. But from the second hand, I think that we were all afraid about the implication that will happen. We were very afraid that a war will happen, and we knew that the victims of this war will be the civilians and mostly the women and children in Gaza, which is really happening right now. We know that thousands of women are being killed in Gaza, thousands of children are being killed in Gaza, and the hundreds of thousands of people were displaced and they lost homes, their homes, and actually this displacement reminds us as Palestinian women of the 1984 Nakba, and there were a lot of politicians in Israel that really wanted to remind us that a second Nakba will happen in Gaza right now. So it was very, very complicated because it's from, the one side, we felt pain. I myself, it was very painful for me to see that, we as women, and I'm as an activist, as a feminist and activist for peace and for shared society in Israel, was trying with my colleagues and with my friends to build. We tried to build a real basis for shared society and building peace, ending the occupation, having freedom for the Palestinian people. And then in the 7th of October, it's all collapse. It's all collapse from the both sides, because we knew that now there will be a regression in the Jewish Israeli side, which is happening right now. And there will be a regression also in the Palestinian side. And we remained as Israeli Palestinians the main group that really still till now wants to engage the two populations together, want to engage the Israeli Jewish, the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, and really starting talking about the two-state solution and talking about peace that gives women and children security. Another point that people are not talking about, and it's one of the results of the 7th of October, is the incitement against us as Palestinian Israelis, as Arab Israelis, and as women Arab Palestinian women, Israeli citizens. Were from the first day after the 7th of October, ministers in the government, especially Ben Gvir and Smotrich, and also other ministers, tried to connect us as Israeli citizens to Hamas and to terrorists. Ben Gvir wanted escalation inside Israel, not only war in Gaza. He wanted us Palestinians, Israelis, and Jewish Israelis to fight each other. Fortunately, I would say that we didn't give him the chance. We didn't give him the chance and we prevented. I'm very proud to say, we as civil organizations,
One more minute.
shared society organization, as feminist organization who works here to promote shared society in Israel, we prevented from this, a scenario to happen. And I would say proudly that the Palestinian community really was very, very well known of the implication of any escalation inside Israel. And from the other side, I would say that I will say, and I will say it clearly, that our voices were silenced. We feel for the first time of my life, I now talking, personal about myself. For the first time of my life, I feel that I cannot speak loud about what's happening. I cannot express myself. The freedom of speech that, Israel are all the time talking about suddenly was vanished regarding the Palestinian voices, and especially the women Palestinian voices. After the 7th of October, we noticed that a lot of Arab women were afraid to go to work. They were afraid to speak Arabic.
Sorry, Maysam. Yep. We'll come back to you, and because we have to present all our panelists and go back to the Q&As. Thank you very much. Now I would like to introduce you to our fifth panelist, and I'm very delighted to invite Dimitri Sisi Mukaneli-Gira, and she will address the role of women in recovery from conflict and creating sustainable peace in Rwanda. Ms. Dimitri Sisi Mukaneli-Gira is a gender activist and educator. She wrote 2 years ago, Do Not Accept to Die, a memoir and a biography of her life on how she survived the genocide against Tutsi in Rwanda in 1994, when she was only 20 years old. Since 2005, Ms. Mukaneli-Gira is also a full-time staff member of the World Bank in Rwanda. She's one of the founding members of Ibuka organization, an umbrella of genocide survivors associations, and the local president of Graduate Women International. Sisi, you have the floor, please. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Yes, thank you, Pascal. Good evening from Kigali, everyone. I grew up in a period of time when a woman, especially a mother, was doing everything at home, but she was never recognized for that. She belonged at home. They wanted her to just stay silenced at home. In the real life, a woman is a pillar of a family, and she's asked for household and external matters. That is a big and a huge responsibility. So what is not understandable about giving women their rights? There shouldn't be any barrier to their well-being and development. Most importantly, their participation in decision-making should never be denied. During the years preceding the genocide in 1994, I have seen a lot of women suffering of discrimination, and they were always the first victims, prey to killers. My contribution today is a message of hope, a message to tell the world that if women are given power and space, they successfully play a role in both preventing wars and conflicts, but also in the process of reconciliation and building of a lasting peace for any nation. More than 30 years ago today, during the preparation of the genocide, I have seen women suffering and raped and killed every single day. Day after, during the genocide, women and children were the first one to suffer. They were the first victims. Rape was used as a weapon for mass killings, for destruction of a total group of people, killing their future. During the genocide that lasted 100 days, we lost more than 1 million people, where 10,740 people were killed every day. Between 2,500 and 300,000 of women were raped. And more than 200,000 of children were also killed. We saw a lot of women infected by HIV and AIDS, and more than 20,000 children were born out of that rape. So after the genocide, in the total absence of men, because the big number of men Tutsi were killed, and another big number of men were in prison because they committed genocide, and another big number of people, also men, were in exile. So we saw a situation where men were totally absent, and the women had to take over, to take their destiny in hands and move on. So those women started sitting together, assess their situations, and work together to forgive and do reconciliation process on their villages. So that is how women found themselves at the center of post-genocide reconstruction efforts. They have to be present to stand up and rebuild what the men unfortunately have destroyed. Together, women were able to influence changes in the laws. Together, women were able to stand up and build and raise up their children. In the last 30 years, we have seen women taking all the roles in the decision-making process. And as a result, Rwanda has now a remarkable achievement in gender inclusivity along various sectors. We have women as a priority in all educations, and we have 57.4 representation of women in STEM fields, sciences.
One more minute.
We also have women, a number of women in the decision-making process, where 61.3 is percent of women are in the parliament, and 42.4 in the cabinet. So we also have a big number of women as a police force, and also have them in peacekeeping missions of operations in the world. So all these numbers to tell you that nothing have changed in Rwanda except leadership. So if leadership is favoring women, we had a visionary leadership that gave women voice and space to work together, and as empowered to be used to fully participate in the decision making. So now we can see an everlasting peace and security for Rwanda. So we don't take it for granted, but we know the future is bright because the women stand up and take their decision in hands.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we will have some questions for you, of course. And it's very, what can I say? It gives a lot of hope to hear about the situation of Rwanda today, but we will talk a bit later about that. Viviane, going back to you. Can you hear me? I would like to ask you if you could explain in which ways the exclusion of women from decision-making processes related to peace and security has an impact on accountability, transparency, and legitimacy. If you could address this question, please.
Sorry. Yes, thank you, Pascal. Thank you for the question. I think it's important to point out that the exclusion of women from these decision-making processes related to peace and security can have dramatic consequences, as they are less likely to address the root causes of conflict, leading to ongoing instability and violence, but they also fail to address their capacity to enhance conflict-related challenges and promote accountability and transparency. This is very important. Therefore, the exclusion of women from peace processes, from peace building and conflict resolution efforts can have far-reaching and damaging consequences, both for the individuals, but also for communities and for societies as a whole. Targeting women is targeting societies because it's targeting humanity. This is very important to stress also. And so the absence of women's voices undermines the legitimacy and inclusivity of peace processes, perpetuating inequalities, marginalization within society, and deprives societies of the potential contributions of half of their population, actually, to peace building, reconciliation, sustainable development efforts. So as a result, they may be less likely to be respected, also implemented by all parties. And this can lead to more ongoing conflict and instability. So yes, it's really important to have women around the table, and it's essential, actually.
Viviane, just in very briefly, so what do we miss when women are excluded from the process? What does it mean in terms of opportunities?
So exclusion of women means missed opportunities, as you said, for sustainable development, but also in regard of the continuation of patriarchal structures and the underutilization of women's skills and expertise. It's really depriving societies from potential contributions of, as I said, over half of the population. And it reinforces those patriarchal structures and norms that perpetuate gender inequality and discrimination. And this can hinder efforts to promote gender equality and women's empowerment in post-conflict societies, perpetuating, as I said, the cycles of violence and oppression. So finally, it also means missing out on the skills, expertise, leadership that women bring to the table. Women have valuable insights and capabilities in areas of conflict resolution, of negotiation, of community mobilization, and their exclusion deprives the communities and the societies of these assets. So it's really about taking the necessary steps to pursue a transformative agenda and build a more equitable and just world. It really aims at promoting and strengthening rights for women and girls by lobbying for this better representation of women in leadership, in the allocation of more resources to address those gender inequalities.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Viviane. Going back to you, Maysam, I would like to ask you, in the line of what Viviane has just said, how can the Israeli Arab women take a more active part and be more involved in the public sphere within the Arab society, as well as in the general society in Israel? If you could answer very briefly also. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. As we all know, I don't need to repeat, what have been said about the importance of a woman being in making the decision positions. But I want to say that this only can happen if we can work together, Jewish and Arab women together, to strengthen each other, to be in a solidarity with each other. That means if I have I believe that the struggles that we are struggling for are the same struggle. It doesn't important if you are Jewish, if you are Palestinian, if you are a Palestinian Arab citizen. And I think that we are all struggling for a better life. We are struggling for a better life for us as a woman, as for our society, and or for our children. But what really makes me sad about it, that it seems to be that we are, living in two separate societies, that everybody has his own fight. We tried a lot, to engage to each other and to do things together, but it seems to be that it's an ad hoc activities. It's not, a goal for a long term. I want to bring a little an example. We are, as Arab women in Palestinian women in Israel, are really struggling for a long time to prevent violence and crimes in our society. We know that we are having a very internal problem of killing and violence, and we know that the government and is not willing to do anything to prevent violence and crime. Unfortunately, we didn't see solidarity from Jewish women. Yes, Women Wage Peace participated in some activities, but we didn't see, this kind of solidarity and, coming tell us your struggle is our struggle and we will do it together. I think that we can succeed as women if we really learn to work together, if we're gonna learn.
I think we have a problem with
to do.
Here.
And I think
we lost you
also
for
a Women Wage Peace needs to have this discussion in order to bring more and more women into the activities.
We have
not only for the
sure.
activities, as partners, as a full equal partners, not to say that yes, we are having Israeli Arab women, because once we feel that this partnership is a real and partnership, this is going to work better than it works now.
Exactly. Thank you, Meissam. I'm trying to run a bit, but we'll manage. So now I would like to come back to Nira. Nira, you were in your kibbutz on the 7th of October, and a few weeks after the massacre, you said in an interview, I quote, "I saw everything I feared would happen."
Yeah.
What did you mean by that? And could you share with us what you felt and what was your thought about that, please?
When I was a member of the Knesset, I was there in the Foreign Defense Committee because I want to be there, because I think that women's voice must be heard, and we are equal of thinking and get a decision. And when I was there, I'll share with the other member of the committee all my thought and my data, and that bring me to understand that something like that could have happened, and we had to protect ourselves from it. And I'm talking about the military solution. And of course, there is a civilian solution also. And I have to say something. When I heard the other members of this panel saying about what we have to do, I want to share with you one detail that is very important, I think. Because, I was like, one of the member of the friendship of being peace to this area. And in my private car, my husband took children with cancer from Gaza to hospital all over Israel. And if you ask me now if I'll do it again, I really want to say yes, of course. But then I stop and says, really? Not because I changed my mind or my believing. It's the reality. And if we are not, all of us, speak out loud and says that we are against terrorism and murder and rape, we can go further. So you have to bring me back to the table of peace. Yes, I think that there is a cabinet of war in the government, and there is no cabinet of peace. And those two processes need to work together. But now we have a problem, and to convince all of the parties, okay, all of the parties, that we need to establish a cabinet of peace, we, the women, have to do something about it. I really want all of us to be there and take a solution, and you know, after the municipal election in Israel, I still see, I think that the results show us, all of us, that men are still the obvious choice. And this is a problem. So if we
Okay,
want to
yeah,
do
I
that,
have to
say what I think
finish.
and
Yes.
say what we think and have the power in our hands and voice, we need to be together.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nira. And we had this idea a few years ago about Cabinet of Peace, so certainly this is a very good and important idea. Now I would like to, if we are, talking about brave and strong women in facing terrible times, as you and as many other women since the 7th of October on both sides of the border. I would like to turn now to Sisi and to ask her, how did women come to live together from different backgrounds, perpetrators and victims, in the aftermath of the genocide against Tutsi in Rwanda? And what do you think made possible the progress of women's work despite the cultural and social barriers like patriarchy and conservatism?
Yes, thank you, Pascal. Like I said, there was a total absence of men because for some reason they have left the country as perpetrators on exile. Others were just killed because they were Tutsi, and the target was always to start by men. And others were in jail, like for justice. And then on the village, women found themselves alone, perpetrators, their husband has left because they killed. So the windows of genocide, they're also there left, without anything. So they had to sit together now as women, as vulnerable, to find solutions between themselves. So they came together to help each other manage the consequences. So there was no hate. Like someone said, we have to fight together for the well-being of our kids and of the society. So then women, I was there too, we became like the initiators of reconciliation. We couldn't hate each other without anything left. So women came together to sit down and say, how are we going to live these consequences? How are we going to fight for our own rights? How are we going to raise children? Many of them have never been to school. They have been absent on all the scenes because they were women. So now we took over. I remember I was 22 years, but I was a founder of 2 big associations because now for the first time I was given space. So now when men came back, like 3, 4 years later, they found the women strong in their villages, working together, and then influencing the leadership to come to them and create and make new laws and give them space to continue working with the men when they are back. So I think that the leadership, the strong leadership and the political will played a big role. but also the participation of women. We didn't wait for someone to come and call, because it was evident, it was emergent, it was an emergency situation. So now, until now, we have been always in all decision-making process, because they come to us, to women, to ask, how do how do we position ourselves to bring solutions on any problem? So with the leadership and with our, we have to make noise. You make noise, you make yourself seen, you participate. So the justice, we had a justice where women was judges on the traditional way. So it was actually impossible to work without women. So now women have set a pace, and something that they can't do anything without women, because women are strong, women are given power, women are given support by the leadership, and women are showing that they're capable of doing anything men can do. So I think we need participation. We need to make noise continuously. We need the women empowering other women, supporting each other. At the end of on the top of everything, we need a strong leadership that is empowering women and giving them space. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sis. Thank you. We have a lot to learn from Rwanda's women, for sure.
Welcome to Rwanda.
With pleasure. So now for the last two questions of our panel, I would like to turn to you, Ruth. And considering your involvement in global gender policy and your work in CSW, what progress has the international community made in addressing sexual violence in conflict, and what impact has it had? In your view, should we focus on addressing this issue based on UN guidelines, or do we have better options?
Thank you for this question. Unfortunately, I think that in this area of conflict-related sexual violence, we are experiencing a very common phenomena that is throughout the framework of international human rights, and that is namely the gap between the law on the books and the law in action. And the fact is that the norms are there and the framework is there. Perhaps not enough resources are being put, but the real problem is the problem of implementation. And unfortunately, at the aftermath of October 7, I think that we are also facing another problem. And that is a problem of double standard, of hypocrisy. And I go back to my previous remarks and my previous comments about the silence. And what I did not mention is also the denial on the part of many, those who are supposedly and presumably and are there to supposedly promote women's rights and to protect the human rights of all people, and yet they dare address sexual violence as a form of resistance, or simply deny that it happened on October 7, despite the fact that this had probably been the most recorded war crime ever committed, because we know for a fact that the Hamas terrorists came in pre-equipped with body cameras, with GoPros, and they broadcasted the atrocities in real time. They even sent it to families of the victims as another form of torture. And I'm afraid to see that even this is being denied, and even after an independent and unbiased body by the UN, the Special Representative of the Secretary General, confirmed what we have been saying since October 8. Even now, UN Women had not seen fit to issue a statement and to recognize and to admit that this was a form of crime against humanity performed by Hamas terrorists. And it's important for me also to say that I'm not for a moment denying the suffering and the devastation of Palestinian women and children and of innocent Palestinians on the other side. But there is no way to equate the use of women's bodies and sexual violence as a weapon of war to advance their political goals, and the very, very sad reality of extreme devastation and humanitarian crisis and thousands, tens of thousands of casualties as a result of the measures of self-defense that Israel had to take after the October 7th attack. I agree that the only solution is peace, and it is ceasefire. And I also hope that with the ceasefire, this will be when we will have all our hostages returned back to us in full shape of body and soul. But by saying that, we cannot escape from the reality that sexual violence was used on October 7th, and there is no way to continue this denial and the silence, because the step forward is, first of all, to recognize and to admit. This is the first step in every process of reconciliation and rehabilitation and bringing justice.
Thank you very much. It's indeed our hope that very soon we'll see reconciliation for both people. We are almost out of time. And to conclude, I would say that our message is very clear. If I want to wrap it up very clearly, very quickly, I would say that the international community and the leadership in the Middle East should listen to the voices of the women in the region, support and protect them in their pursuit of peace, and prevent their silencing. On behalf of Women Wage Peace, I would like to thank our 5 remarkable panelists for the diversity of opinions and for what they have done and continue to do for the advancement of the status of women in the world. I would like to thank the Ambassador of Canada to the UN and the Ambassador of Canada to Israel for their sponsorship and inspiring remarks. And of course, I want to make a big like to our wonderful team, Miri, Mazal, Angela, Karen, Yael, Rosara, and Naama. We would like to express our deep gratitude to the audience for your interest, and we invite you to sign and add your voices to our joint vision and mission of Israeli and Palestinians Mother's Call, and to support us. You will find all the links in the chat. As you know, we are facing very difficult times with endless suffering and losses, but we believe and hope that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict can and must end for the sake of our children and grandchildren. Now we demand the immediate and unconditional release of all the 134 hostages, including 19 women and 2 children. They are held hostages by Hamas in Gaza for 165 days. To paraphrase David Grossman, a writer, a peace activist, and a bereaved father, we deeply believe that with the same determination and creativity we addressed the war of no choice, we must now address the peace of no choice. Finally, we have dedicated this event to the memory of our friend Viviane Silver, and we are determined to following her footsteps and legacy. And like she used to say, and ended all her emails, we say again, together with her. We are not stopping until there is a political agreement. We want to wish Ramadan Karim and Purim Sameach to all who celebrate these days. I would like to send from here, from Israel and from all around the world, shalom, salam, and peace to all of you. Thank you very much.